Official Strongman Games, Event 1, Viking Press. So athlete will begin with the Viking Press implement from shoulder rack position to overhead for max reps within 60 seconds. So there'll be a 60-second time limit. Total reps is your score. Athlete must wait for judge's command for it to be a good rep. Double dip is not allowed. You cannot bend again after the initial press. Strict press and push press only. Each rep must start below your chin. You're allowed to rest in between reps, but each rep must start from the shoulder rack position and not from the implement's resting position. You cannot thrust it from the ground. So tell us about Viking Press, Tom. What comes into your mind when you're thinking Viking Press for the athletes? And by the way, it's facing out.
Facing out, yeah. So it makes a much better picture, doesn't it? Anyway, so with the Viking Press, the first thing I think of is reactive reps. This is going to be dependent on how they referee it, but I don't know what they did, because was it in last year or 2 years ago where you were allowed to go straight back
2019, I think it was, yeah.
Right, so 2019. What I mean by reactive reps is where you want to rest is overhead. If you have a lockout overhead, yes, you're essentially resting. When you bring it down, you may want to have some control. As you come down to here, you bend your knees, you thrust it back up. So it's a reactive rep. You don't stop. If you rest overhead, you wait for your down signal and then go again. I know you get the advantage of resting it on the implement to a dead stop, which again can be, you can take that into account with your training, but reactive reps are going to be quicker reps and you're going to get more reps with less fatigue. So that's the main technique point. What about you with regards to technique? Any
Yes, so that was one of the things that I was going to suggest was be like, I think, depending what way you come from, I think CrossFitters may refer to it as cycling your reps or cycling the barbell. You often see it. But yeah, the premise of what you just said about you can, I think the point about taking your breath overhead rather than, I think people take the error of doing the eccentric and then getting the breath down whilst they're in this rack position. Whereas I feel like if your overhead positioning is good and you get those joints stacked, a heavy weight can feel really efficient if you're using your skeleton well and you're stacking the joints on top of each other. So I feel like that overhead position is bang on, and that's where to take the breath. And simply put, the more skillful you get at what Tom said about reactive reps, you'll get, the more you practice it, the more confident you'll be in the faster eccentric, and you'll be more confident that, you know what, I can bomb it down a little bit and save a little bit of energy, because I know that I'm going to be able to absorb. I'm in the right position to absorb it on the way down and send it straight back up. Yeah. So a little note on the so I think that's a brilliant, regardless of whether you're going for you think you're going to be going for a triple, whether you're going for 5, whether you're going for 10. I think doing the reactive reps is going to be a game changer for a lot of people if they're not already doing it. And if you don't have access to a Viking Press, you can of course you can practice this with a barbell. You can practice it with a log. So the good news is, technically, when you get your hand on, if you can get your head around it with a log or barbell axle, the smaller the implement in terms of diameter, you'll probably find it a little bit easier to learn the skill of. So you'll probably find a barbell easier, more forgiving than, say, trying to do this technique on a log. But the good news is, you go to a Viking Press and try this technique, even if you've never tried it before, and it should be quite easy to learn, because you kind of attached to the implement, and that's going to provide you with a lot of stability. What about foot position, Tom? Like, have you had a play around with foot position? What would you say?
With facing outwards, I wouldn't stand too far in front, because the implement's going to be behind you at the top. So I wouldn't stand too far in front, but I wouldn't stand directly underneath. So I'd probably be I don't know, mid, so your heel or your ankle would be level with the point of the bar, straight down. Yeah. So heel would be here. So there's a little bit, but I wouldn't want to be pressing behind me too much. Did you go in 2019, or did you have any athletes go?
No, I didn't. No.
Right, so there's a bit of inside information here. that you wouldn't get unless you were there or unless you spoke to someone. So what I've been told, the Viking Press in 2019 didn't just go up and down. There was ever so slightly a little bit of play left and right. Now, Lynn may well be fixing this problem. He may have received feedback on that. It's just an element where
supposedly it's a completely new Viking Press.
Right.
So they have changed it on the feedback. So building on the positioning thing about what Tom's just said about having the feet ever so slightly behind, but definitely not in front. I would suggest to everybody to explore with your different feet position. I think the further that the farther back that you can get whilst maintaining balance and not feeling like you're completely forward, it's going to give you a couple of advantages. It's going to enable you to, if you move your feet behind the kind of implement when facing out, what you can do is you can feel like you're actually using your body weight in the rack position. You can feel like you, instead of just pushing all the way up, you're actually leaning your body weight into the kind of, because you remember it's a lever. So you can actually lean your body weight into it a little bit. Much the same principle as people use when they do a car deadlift. If they use the lever, a lot of people make the mistake with a car deadlift to just deadlift it like a normal deadlift. Whereas if you can get used to a car deadlift, getting your feet further forward and actually getting your body weight, manipulating your body weight to move that lever, I find that it can be helpful. And also as well, another advantage that you get about the further back you can get your feet within reason. If you compare the lockout height compared to being further forward, the lockout height is actually a little bit lower. So in terms of how far you're lifting the actual implement, if you can get your feet further back and remain balanced, you can actually lock out a little bit lower. So again, this is something that's going to be individual, and you're going to have to explore. And if anybody says to you, draws a mark on the floor saying you should be lifting from there, it's not right. Like we need to definitely individualize. So another little pointer, slightly off that I've written down. I've said that if you feel like when you push press, like it's common for people to scooch back when they press and jump back. So if you're going to be, say, looking to do the reactive reps, like we've mentioned, this is something that you just need to be a little bit careful of. Like, have you got enough power without moving your feet back? If you can get enough power and getting your feet, say, fully extended and then starting back in the same place, your feet are going to be in the same position to do the reactive reps. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yeah, no, I get it. Completely makes sense. It's just inefficient. The same on the log, same on any push press, isn't it?
Yeah, but
another thing I would say is regards to timing. You've got 60 seconds. A lot of these weights, no one's going to be repping for the whole time. So one of the key variables is knowing when to take that rest period. Now, for me, I tell my athletes, when you do a certain amount of reps, you don't want to hit a grinding rep. So a grinding rep would be like a maximal effort rep. So once you start to feel that the bar speed is slowing on the concentric to lockout, you need to be cognizant and aware of when you need to take that rest. It could be earlier than what you've trained for. It could be earlier than maybe what your competitors are doing. You need to kind of be aware. I would practice doing minute second as a back offset. Sorry, minute sets as a back offset. So you can literally go bump, 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 rep. Okay, rep 8 felt slower, stop. You take your 10, you go on. There is nothing more frustrating as a coach than to watch an athlete not take any rest or take less than 10 seconds or 5 seconds, go in, and then they miss a rep. You can take that extra 15 seconds and get one more rep, or you can take 5 seconds and end up failing it 3 times. So it's timing your rest period so you don't hit a grinding rep, because then the drop-off's going to happen. And then
so where would you rest, Tom?
I'd rest in a complete dead stop position.
Right. Okay. So I'm not sure on the rules. Are they allowed to stop and then restart? or is it like once you
I
stop?
think the bottom one said you're allowed to rest between reps.
Brilliant. Yeah. Oh, that's great then.
I think that means you're allowed to put the implement down. I would double check that with Lynn if I was competing. But I think you're allowed to put it down. I believe that's what they were allowed to do in 2019 as well.
Right, brilliant. That's great.
It changes it, doesn't it? Because you normally in a Viking press, you can't put it down. It changes the game a little bit.
Yeah. So you could almost do, like, say for somebody like, say someone like me, if I do it, for instance, I know that it's going to be close to my limit. Like, I'm not going to be thinking about, like, say, going for double figures reps, for instance. So I think if you're allowed to reset and say, if I was going for, like, realistically, like a single or a double or a triple or something, then doing like kind of like a rest pause kind of set would be really good, wouldn't it? You know, like to be fair, that's what I did at the qualifier, at the competition at the weekend. Like, I knew that I was aiming for 3 reps. I managed to get four reps on the log, for instance, but I knew that I was a lot more likely to finish on 3 than I would be of ever getting 5. So actually, I split it up in my head into 15-second blocks, and I just used to try and maximize the time. And I feel that, if you know your limits on certain stuff, that can be a really valuable. You see a lot of people just going for it, just see what I can do on the day and just go for it on the day. Whereas actually being strategic and knowing your limits and using your time like you suggested can be really, really beneficial.
Rest pause is going to be your friend within your training block as well.
Yeah.
Again, it depends how you program, but it would be, for me, it would be like an accumulation phase. I would do something like, we do 8 reps, but we would do it as 5, 2, 1. So you do 5, take your 10 seconds, 2, take your 10 seconds, 1. Generally, if you're in the competition, you're going to get a lot of reps done in the first 30 seconds, and then it's going to peak off. So 5, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, things like that would help. Cluster training would be your friend, the classic clusters as well.
I think that's a really key point to reiterate what you just made about staying away from that grindy rep. And and again, it's all about self-awareness, isn't it? Like, because some people can look like it's still moving fast, but anyway, we're going off on a tangent a little bit, but I've got one more thing on the Viking press, and it's in terms of technique. So I think, because obviously for somebody who, like, say for instance, I'm a massive advocate of jerking, like your push press style. I think doing the Viking press, doing a push press with the style of push press that you kind of teach and you practice, I think is brilliant for the Viking press, and that's something that puts someone like me, whereas on other implements I'm just using kind of push press as an assistance exercise for the lift. I need to get better at my performance within push press as its own entity within this. And I think that it's going to be slightly different. And because basically how I'd use like push press on my log and axle and stuff, it's just all about like bar path and getting that bar path and the dip and drive exactly the same as I'll use for the jerk, if you will. Whereas on the Viking press, what I've been playing with is I've actually been really exaggerating going into this position, you know, with the head back that you teach, and it's great because basically in my head, like, I'm trying to simplify it to people listening, because you can't jerk. A jerk is obviously rebending the knee, yeah. Whereas you're almost using your back to jerk. If that's the way that I look at it in this, is basically like you obviously you extend explosively, and then the better and the more mobile and the more flexible and confident and strong you can be at going into extension with the spine, then you're actually getting that lockout point lower, and then you're kind of getting underneath. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. You're using biomechanics just to make it that little bit more efficient. Obviously, it can depend on the Viking press. Like my one, if you try to lean back whilst facing out, you might get a headache. But that's why I like to use the push press as the main, and then I only use the jerk on the axle and the dumbbell. But interestingly, you've got push press and jerk because we've got the circus dumbbell. I know we're going to get to that. Yeah. But it's gonna test. It's gonna overhead. It's nice to see the fact that you've got the two different styles. I like that. I think that's cool.